Hi, I'm Xiaoqiu Xu. Today I'm going to talk about my paper in Foreign Language Annals titled Using Meaningful Interpretation and Chunking to Enhance Memory, the Case of Chinese Character Learning. This paper is co-authored with my advisor, Professor Padilla, and was converted from part of my dissertation completed at Stanford School of Education. I'm going to talk about the background, research questions, method, results, findings, as well as teaching implication and research implications of the paper. First, background. As many of you may have known, Chinese is a very difficult language. And the most difficult element in learning Chinese language is the learning of Chinese characters. While English is an alphabetic language, whose writing system roughly represents its sound system, Chinese is different. Its writing system and sound system seem to be independent of each other. Therefore, learning Chinese characters is difficult because of the large number of the non-alphabetic and visually complex symbols. Sometimes students say Chinese characters are like random symbols. They are just everywhere and you cannot remember them. Are Chinese characters random symbols? The answer is no. Chinese characters are not random symbols. There are patterns behind Chinese characters that they can use to help their memory. Chinese characters are embedded with meaningful representations and can be categorized into 4 major categories. Category 1 is pictogram. For example, Shan looks like a mountain and it means mountain. Category 2 is simple ideograms. For example, here's San, it's 3 strokes and it means 3. Number 3 is ideogrammic compounds. For example, here, Mu means wood. 2 mu ling means grove. 3 mu sen means forest. The last category is phonosemantic compounds. So in phonosemantic compounds, there are 2 radicals, 1 sound radical and 1 meaning radical. For example, hua, the top part, 草字头, is the meaning radical. It means plant. And the word of hua is flower. And the bottom radical is the sound radical. It's pronounced as hua, and this character is pronounced as hua. Then among the 4 categories, the 4 major categories of Chinese characters, actually about 90% of them is ideogrammic compounds, 形声词. So we need to pay particular attention to 形声词, ideogrammic compounds. But only 26% of those ideogrammic compounds are transparent. Transparent means that the meaning radical and the sound radical match exactly with the character, like the character I demonstrated earlier before. And non-transparent characters mean that the meaning and sound radical no longer match the character. An example of the non-transparent character will be this character, fa. The left part is the meaning radical. It means water. However, the character fa means law. The right part is the sound radical, which is pronounced as chu, but the character is pronounced as fa. So as time goes by, Chinese characters evolved, and many of the ideogrammic compounds no longer has the matching philosophy between the character and the meaning and sound radicals. So what do we do with those characters? The chunking method is based on a method proposed by the Chinese Linguistic Bureau and Professor Chu, which says that among the 3,500 characters, there is only 132 chunks. This paper combined meaningful interpretation and chunking, and we call it MIC method. We investigated whether the MIC method is more effective than the traditional stroke order method. There are 5 main research questions. First, is the MIC method more effective than the traditional stroke order method in student immediate learning of Chinese characters? Second, is the MIC method more effective than the traditional stroke order effort in terms of students' retention of Chinese characters? Third, does the MIC method have a long-term effect on students' learning of Chinese characters? 4. Which treatment is more effective in learning Chinese characters? Teacher total instruction, teacher cued instruction, or students' independent learning? And the last question is, how does the level of instruction and heritage versus non-heritage learner background affect instructional treatment for learning Chinese characters? Here's the design of the study. We recruited over 100 students from a school district from the Mandarin classes, and we divided them into one treatment group and one control group according to a pretest. And we selected 32 characters, so students can learn them over 4 days. Each day they learn 8 characters. There are 4 days of the experiment, and there are 2 groups, one control group and one treatment group. On day 1, we introduced the character set 1, 8 characters. For the control group, we used stroke order, traditional stroke order method, and it's teacher total instruction. So the teacher demonstrate the characters on the board following the stroke order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the students followed. And they practiced, they just write the characters for several times, rote memorization type of thing. For the treatment group, it's teacher instructed MIC method. So what the teacher do is she told students, this is the meaning radical, this is the sound radical, and the sound radical exactly matches the character, and you should memorize it this way, blah blah blah. On day 2, we introduced the character set 2. So for the control group, they pretty much did the same thing, but it's teacher cued. So the teacher just write the order of characters, mark the order of characters, and that students practice by themselves. For the treatment group, it's teacher cued MIC. So what the teacher do is she give hints to students like, this is the sound radical, where have you seen this before, what does it mean? So try to engage students in participating and meaningfully interpreted or chunk the characters by themselves. On day 3, we introduced character set 3, and for the control group, it's students' independent traditional method. So teacher just let students know these are the 8 characters you're going to learn today, and students just practice them, rote memorizing, practicing the stroke order by themselves. Teacher actually disappeared in the classroom right after she handed out the 8 characters. And same for the MIC method. Students just got 8 characters, and they learned 8 characters by themselves using the MIC method. Day 4 is exactly the same as day 3, so it's a repeated day 3. Then each day after students learned the characters, there is a related activity. So students look up the characters in the dictionary and make up words or phrases using the characters they learned. And after the activities, each day there is a quiz testing students' short-term memory of the 8 characters they learned each day. Then a week later, we came back to the classroom giving students a retention test. What we tested them are actually the 32 characters they learned over these 4 days. Then, 2 months later, we came back to the classroom again, and we gave them an application test. We didn't test the 32 characters again. We tested them the characters they learned from their own teachers starting from this point, when the experiment was done, to the 2 months later when we came back to the classroom. So here is what we found from the study. First, for the immediate test, on each day, students performed significantly better in the treatment group than the control group. For the retention test, we found the same thing. Students performed significantly better in the treatment group again. The confusing thing about the experiment is on the application test. We actually didn't detect any significant difference between the treatment and the control group. Why is that? We've thought about that, and we found out that during the 2 months between the experiment and the application test, the students' teachers actually still used the stroke order traditional method to teach students. So that gives an controverting effect to the experiment. So students actually didn't perform well in the application test. Then the day effect, or the instructional method. What we found is there are 4 days. Day 1 is teacher total instruction. Day 2 is teacher cued instruction. Day 3 is first day student independent work. Day 4 is second day of familiar student independent work. And what we found is that Day 2 and Day 4 works better for Day 1 and Day 3, which means that teacher cued instruction and student familiar independent work works better for teacher total instruction and unfamiliar student independent work. Finally, in terms of the heritage versus non-heritage and level of instruction effect, we found that actually lower level students perform worse, of course, than the higher level students. And the non-heritage speakers perform worse than heritage speakers, which means that teachers need to provide more rapport to lower level Chinese learners and non-heritage Chinese learners. So what does this tell us in terms of the teaching implications? First, we need to distinguish MIC method from other methods. It's not the application of the radical knowledge by itself. There are 3 key elements of MIC method. First, meaningful interpretation. Second, chunking. And third, association of the radicals and chunks. To be more specific, here are some suggestions. First, teachers need to clearly introduce the MIC method and demonstrate to students through abundant examples regarding how to use this method. Second, when a new radical or a new chunk first appears, teachers should highlight it immediately so students can store it in their memory and activate their memory in their further studies. Third, in daily lessons, teacher can instruct students how to connect connect the same Chinese radicals and chunks among different characters. So try to organize the characters by the same radicals and chunks. Fourth, teachers should not impose their own interpretation of the characters to students. Rather, they should give students cues and encourage them to use their own ways to meaningfully interpret the characters or chunk the characters. Last, students need constant rehearsals in using the MIC method. Finally, the research implication for further similar researches. There are several limitations of the study. First, we didn't find any significant effect on the application test because the study wasn't long enough, it's just 4 days. So if possible, we can lengthen the study a little bit longer. So another way to overcome this limitation is instead of assigning students into control and treatment group, we can assign teachers to the control and treatment group, then comparing the student achievement. And finally, the study did not investigate the relationship between types of Chinese characters and the intervention effect. So researchers who are more interested in linguistics can compare the intervention difference in terms of such as transparent versus non-transparent characters, frequency of the characters, number of strokes, etc. Okay, so here is just a summary of my study as well as my own take on its results, findings, and implications. Thanks for listening to my talk. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Bye.